Assalamu alaikum, Adab.
Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome back to Studio Khanyar, Lights, Camera, Education. I'm your energetic and enthusiastic host, RJ Minsha.
And I'm her very own companion, RJ Bazila. It's the hub of fascinating content where we bring you a world of entertainment and all things fun and fabulous.
It's the time of the day where we gather around the airwaves to share a few hours of pure bliss, and we are ready to ignite your day with the best stories and engaging conversations.
So with a burst of positivity, let's get our show started. Today we have the honor of interviewing the esteemed guests Mr. Durrnian, an international educationalist, and Mr. Danish Aziz, who's serving as education specialist for Jammu and Kashmir.
It's a really proud moment for us to interview such great personalities, that is Mr. Durrnian and Mr. Danish Aziz.
We welcome both of you and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
So first of all, sir, I would like to ask you, how have you been?
Well,
You can go first.
Thank you. This is maybe my fourth trip
visit
to the Valley. And each time I really enjoy meeting people, students like yourselves, hearing new, fresh ideas and new ways of thinking and doing, much like your podcast here. So it's a pleasure to escape from Delhi to come here.
Thanks, sir. Sir, what about you?
I am originally not from Kashmir, but I've spent 5 years in Kashmir, and I must say this is a place that never ceases to amaze. And like Terry just said over here, there's always something new to look forward to. There's always something exciting happening. I mean, Kashmir never tends to bore you in any which way. And I think this, as I was saying earlier, is one of the most innovative things I've seen. I mean, I've never seen something like a radio studio or a podcast. So congratulations to you and your team for this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
So, Mr. Danish Aziz, let's start by delving into your early experiences and education. So, can you share some valuable insights from your childhood that has shaped your path in challenging regions like Kashmir?
I think like everyone else, my career path, I mean, as you grow up, you tend to have different ideas, different thoughts about what you eventually want to end up doing, of course. And also in your career path, you always don't end up doing what you thought you could do. And that's, I think, in a way, you could call it destiny. You could also say it's something for the best. I would say I ended up in this profession by accident. And I say, and I mean it when accident, I wanted to have a career in media and mass communications, that I used to look forward to that pretty much like probably you girls are looking forward to. But eventually at that point of life, at that point of time, I decided to take up a master's in social work, which I ended up doing from Jamia Millia Islamia. That is, I think, would shape. So I wouldn't say so much about childhood, but I think that those 2 years, and I felt that maybe I could be doing a much better job. So that 2 years of orientation, master's in social work, put me here where I am today, and that kind of changed my perspective, changed my career entirely, and what I wanted to do. And that's how I got into the development sector. I worked with different agencies, with the government and international agencies, even NGOs, and eventually, and I think it's been 22 years in this profession, and I'm working with UNICEF now.
Okay. So, sir, have there been any prominent obstacles that you faced while pursuing your educational goals? And if yes, how did you overcome them?
At this point of time, I can't say. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are many struggles in education. I mean, the struggles that I can think of, this is probably one of the main struggles. I think, apart if you look at financial struggles, I think in today's day and age, if our youth or youngsters or students can the basic answer this question, figure out what they want to do in life, and need to say this, that 50% of your problems are solved instantly. Once you figure out what you want to do and then start pursuing your goal towards that, that is figuring it out, I would say, is 50% of that hurdle taken for. Because at this point of time, you're spoiled for choice. There's so much happening, and we are not in that day and age when there would be like 3 or 4 career options. Now, if you look at, and we have started this career portal, which was launched by the Principal Secretary School Education. You may have heard of it. Last December, we launched a Manzile 2.0 version. It's called Manzile. It has 500 plus career options. So now you can imagine a student who's passing out of class 10th or 12th has 500 plus, and that's just what we have been able to compile. There's so many more different professions. So I would say, yeah, that was one of the main challenges I've tried. I was spoiled for choice too, like everyone else. I had 3 very diverse career options. I had, from peer pressure, I almost got into fashion design. I got into National Institute of Fashion Technology, but I wanted to do mass communication, and look where I am today. I studied social work eventually. So you see, I would say that is the biggest financial, that would be the biggest obstacle that I faced, and thankfully overcome that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Terry, I'd like to ask you the question now. So, from your early years and education, must have played a significant role in your educational journey to make you a prominent figure in education that you are today. So, could you provide an overview about your broader goals and core values, especially within the realm of education?
Okay, thank you. I've come to where I am today, really from humble beginnings, classroom teacher. And still now, when people ask me, what is your profession? I quickly say teacher. I may be in UNICEF now. And really, from the beginning, it's a desire to support students like yourselves and support them in their learning. My first teaching job, it was a remote community. So it was 6 hours vehicle ride from the nearest city. And a community maybe of Indian standards, maybe very, very small, less than 100 people. Okay. So I taught in a small school with mixed Indigenous Canadians who spoke Cree and English. So facing the challenges how to support the learning of students who may be some very comfortable in English, but some less comfortable in English. But being able to bring education to them equally. Yes. So I think it's that desire to help students get over their own obstacles they may see in their own professional development. I mean, when I was teaching in that school, I had the first students pass secondary school and went on to university, which is for me, it was very, very exciting. Was less my achievement, but I was very excited for their achievement. I think that was more important. And then coming to where I am today, I think it's more fate. My grandmother always said, you will be where you're supposed to be. And I don't know if I understood it at that time, but there's a simple but very big truth in that. So I went from teaching in a very small community, volunteering in a remote area in Cambodia, and over the last 20 years, working really for children and their right and access to education and quality education across maybe 3 continents. And now I'm in India speaking to you and hopefully supporting in terms of this amazing endeavor that you have in terms of this podcast.
Thank you, sir. So, as a leader in education, what's your vision about the condition of education in India?
It's a short question, but a very big question. I think there's huge amounts of possibility. I mean, in this country, when I visit here in Kashmir, or I was just recently in Telangana, huge possibilities. I mean, I think change is happening here so quickly. But at the same time, the importance of students not to remember where they're from and that grounding, and then that enables them to progress successfully. So I see that if I look at, for example, the NEP, the National Education Policy, a lot of that is embodied, that aspiration. And I think it's very important to have aspirations. You talk vision or a direction that you want to go in, and then working out by asking questions, maybe trial and error, how do we get from our current situation, which may not always be the best, but with the idea, how do we make it better? Not to simply say I don't like it, or it's bad, but really asking, okay, maybe it's not perfect, but how do I take action to improve and to change for the betterment, not just for myself, but for the community? And I think that's very important. I think in India, I see that huge possibility and really bring students, parents, and the community together to recognize that together you can accomplish so much more by asking questions, but also challenge yourself to the change you want to have and to plan that change forward and be open.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Terry, as we know that innovative projects always lead to progress. So, can you highlight some of the successful initiatives that has effectively enhanced education in challenging environments?
I think my colleague Danish just mentioned in terms of the coding program that's currently being piloted. Well, I think it's beyond piloting now in Kashmir. And then we started it during COVID. Well, we supported it. It's really the teachers here that really took it forward. And people said, why Kashmir? And I said, why not? And I think a lot of innovation is to start small, but think big. Think of as I mentioned, the possibilities. I was reflecting back in terms of the classroom in Canada where I taught, where some students spoke English, some did not. And I think, how do you think innovatively to recognize all the students in your classroom, but include them in their learning? So what's small, innovative? So, for example, in that case, I taught English, but I took their first language into my English classroom and allow them to use it to improve their English, but also allow them greater participation in the classroom. So I think innovation is not always technology. It's really looking at how to do things differently and be clear why you want to choose it. And have that objective or the result in mind that you want to have in terms of what you want to develop.
So thank you.
So, Mr. Danish, I would like to ask you, could you refer to some notable efforts aiming at improving education in the regions like J&K?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like I also mentioned that it's been 5 years. We've been working here for more than 5 years actually. I have only been working in this position for 5 years. So we work in kind of furthering the work of the school education department, and I'm really also very proud to say that we are one of the organizations that provide technical support to the Department of School Education, and we have had some strong collaborations. We work in the, right from the area of early childhood education, foundation learning, literacy, numeracy. We've also kind of revolutionized school safety. You might have seen some of the initiatives, UNICEF programs in school safety, which we have been doing. Then, and as I mentioned earlier, we've had career guidance and counseling. We've also worked a lot on mental health and psychosocial support in schools. During COVID and post-COVID, we've continued that work on that. And one of the first organizations to have introduced life skills. And also now, as Terry just mentioned, we've started working on coding since last year. We've introduced coding, which is one of the first. And you'll be happy to know that J&K across all union territories and states across India, J&K is one of the first to have school, coding from class 6 onwards and introduced in school. So these are some of the initiatives that we work in.
Sure. So what drives your dedication in the fields of education?
I would say, anybody's drive or dedication, I think it stems from the, I believe in the theory of currents and countercurrents. I think your efforts are only as strong or more, they're more resolute when the response is as good. I would say that the kind of energy that I found here and the kind of response, and I saw the appetite, the appetite for, that change that Terry just mentioned. For instance, if I just take the example of coding, you just mentioned about a challenging environment. I think even in a challenging environment like Kashmir, the appetite for, the students to learn and the teachers to teach was so great that anybody would get motivated to that. So I think that has been my driving force. It's who I'm serving is as always the person. So even as if somebody is delivering a service and the service receivers are not well receiving to that, they also lose their motivation. So the person who's serving them, if their motivation, I think, comes from the people who are the beneficiaries of that service.
Thank you. So, Mr. Terry, as you know about the COVID-19 pandemic, so it disrupted the education system globally. So how did you ensure continued learning, especially through online platforms?
Yes, it was, I think, a big challenge to education, not only in India, but globally. And I think its effects will be felt for years to come. In terms of in India, we work very closely with the Ministry of Education in terms of supporting their efforts. How do we bring education not only online, but more broadly remotely? Because quite often you speak of education, bring the students to the school. I think in this case, it's really how do we bring the education to where the students are? And I think that change in perspective in terms of how we supported a local community, where community volunteers set up informal classrooms outside, where our teachers did WhatsApp groups, online lessons, looking at reaching through YouTube or TV. So we work very closely at the national and state level with initiatives with partners, but also the government in education in terms of diversifying, because not all students can access, or different locations, and maybe can't access learning the same way. So looking at how teachers can reach out, sometimes physically, sometimes WhatsApp or online, and bring education to where students are. And I think in a lot of sense that made the difference for a lot of students and whether they could access or not access learning during this challenging period.
Thanks, sir. Now I'd like to ask you, as we know that equipping the educators and students having IT skills is really crucial. So could you elaborate the strategies that can be employed to foster the digital efficiency?
Digital efficiency. I think it's fostering digital, coming back to the innovation idea. And I think you're a good product of that. So I think with digitalization initiative, it's not laying out a whole program. Take this and do it. But it's lighting a spark in people, giving them the basic skills and ideas to take things forward. And I think here, looking at the teacher here, your teacher, in terms of he took a course that he took advantage of and how that lit all these other actions around. I think that's the potential impact of digital. So it's reaching out, providing those initial skills, but also like following up, like we are here today. How are those skills being taken forward? Are they being used? Asking questions, seeing, being excited, or even earlier today when we spoke to the secretary, challenging, asking questions. I think that's the main purpose of education, is to challenge students, ask them questions, and really get them to think new ways of doing things, new ways of seeing the world.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Danish, I would like to ask you, what advice would you like to offer to students in difficult circumstances to enhance their learning journey?
So, tough one. That could be a range of different things. I wouldn't say that I would offer a single-handed advice. I mean, there isn't like really as one size fits all formula. I mean, if they are going through a challenging circumstances, I mean, of course, I would want to kind of first of all ask them to see what could be the form of challenges. I mean, there are a variety of challenges, but if you could ask me for one standalone advice, I mean, that would be, broadly speaking, it would be something that I also would say to myself, that this too shall pass. I mean, you can overcome it. So it's basically, it's also not giving them any kind of false hopes, but also to say it's a basic idea is that if you can overcome it, you will overcome. If there's something that you are unable to, and I'm not gonna say that every challenge that is thrown your way you will overcome it. There will be disappointments, there will be setbacks, but how fast you bounce back, how quickly you regain yourself from that setback defines who you are as a person. So in both circumstances, I would say, so you in every challenging circumstances, you have to challenge the circumstance back. If you can't do that, then the best recourse would be to bounce back as quickly as you can.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Terry, the same question to you. What would be your advice to students struggling?
I think trying to think, it is a difficult question. You shouldn't be asking so difficult questions. I think be open to possibilities and look towards solutions. I think it's very easy to focus on problems.
Yes.
And I think problems is good to recognize, but not to dwell on. Because I think that unites. And we know, I think what Danish says, everything changes. So I think it's focusing on who you are and have confidence in yourself and your ability, and looking for opportunities and solutions to your situation.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Terry, as we know that collaborating with local stakeholders is really crucial. So how do you create sustainable change in the educational sector, considering the socio-political landscape?
I think there's a lot of movement in this area now. I think there's a greater recognition of the importance, like I mentioned earlier. If you want to change education, I think the system can't do it alone. And I think there's greater recognition, even if you look at J&K, looking at a network of organizations coming together. How can we work together to improve the situation? Not to compete, but be collaborative. And how do we collaboratively work with government as a duty bearer? We're looking at a rights-based approach. And I think that's really important. And it's really looking at how can those collaborative relations be stimulated and convened. And I think, again, coming back to this idea that they can be positive in terms of focusing on what can we do together. We know what the issue is. To a greater extent, people do in a community know where problems are. How do we come together? And how do we bring other people on? I think there's a lot of movement in India around civil society and private sector working together with government. I think that's growing. I think that if you look at what's vision in the NEP in terms of developing, I think, 2047, a developed nation, I think these stakeholders need to come together under that common vision of what do students today need, not only today, but today is already tomorrow. And the skills, and I think a lot of people focus on the hard skills, but looking at the soft skills, like asking the difficult questions, is very important. Listening to the answers, posing another question back. But those type of interactions and higher order skills in terms of, I think it's very important in that collaborative in terms of bringing positive change forward.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Danish, as we know that there are a lot of young educators who are aspiring to make a positive impact in challenging regions like Kashmir. So what would be your guidance to them?
You mean young educators as in like people who want to educate others in terms of or in a structured
Yes,
system?
Yes, sir,
just like you. Just to clarify the question. Yeah, so I would say that there's a huge huge landscape. There's a lot of work to be done. There's no dearth of playing ground for people who want to work in this area of education. And also I would say there's a lot of appetite. Because as Terry was just saying, different players need to come together, whether it's the private sector, government, and civil society. But at the same time, there's still going to be huge gaps which need to be filled. And even yesterday, the Principal Secretary School Education was also in his address, in his session, he was mentioning that we need as many people. We need every hand on board. So I would say for them, I think one of the three words I would like to say is, first of all, be collaborative, be cooperative, and third word I would say would be convergence, for them to work with this thing. Working in silos, usually it might be very gratifying, but at the same time, there's only so much you can do on your own. So collaboration and cooperation is the way to go when you come to this thing. And working around with the system to kind of try and work on that, because it might be gratifying, it might be you get these low-hanging fruits when you work at a small level, which is good, which I totally agree. But if you want to change the largest status quo, you have to work at that scale. Maybe as an individual you can't do that. That's why you need to align. So my advice would be these three words that I just said: collaborate, cooperate, and converge.
Thank you, sir. Sir, now I would like to ask you, could you highlight some specific areas in J&K where significant strides have been made in the educational sector?
Areas, you mean in terms of geographical areas or
yes.
Specific? It's very hard to pinpoint. I would not play, regional favorites when it comes to any area, but I would say, depends in some of the remote areas. I think Baramulla and Kupwara have done pretty well in terms of, but aspirational districts, a lot of advances. Today we had people from from the ATLs there, one of the schools, high school Bomai, they were there. They've done pretty phenomenal. Again, not being very partial to North Kashmir, I would say Kupwara, pretty impressed by Kupwara as well. Kupwara district has done some good work in these areas. Not because of specific, I think, so again, I'm not saying that it's a geographical kind of a reason behind that. I think it's about your question, about having the right kind of a leadership. It's about these people, I think, who are driving these educational initiatives. So that whole thing depends on the kind of leadership, what kind of a person is driving all these forces. Because see, as teachers, everyone are at the same grade, almost at the same level of education. They've gone to the same school, similar school. How you are delivering that education which you gain. 250 teachers have done this course with Tata Institute of Social Sciences and ICT. But is everyone delivering the same way? That really depends. So some of the, I would say, honestly, all the way across, all the way from Samba, all the way to Baramulla and Bandipora. I would not say any particular region, but there have been these little pockets which have these shine of brilliance which I have seen. So I would not be partial to any particular districts, because even in the remotest areas of like Bhadarwa and Doda, we have this guy, Vikrant Singh, who runs this whole Jammu Kashmir knowledge network. And Bhadarwa, as you know, getting to Bhadarwa itself is a challenge. So I'm not again saying this. Some of the remotest areas have also showed some sheer signs of brilliance. They've been done some amazing innovations. So I wouldn't say there are any particular areas, but yeah, it all depends on the person behind that and how they are driving change even in challenging circumstances.
Yes, sir.
Next page.
Okay.
Pause.
Yes, please.
It's an intervention.
One of the censored and social political question. The second last one.
Now we have
You get the copy. Just write it on the cap.
Yes, I've told them that.
Yeah.
Unless Jalpa kills it. Actually, I've been meaning to ask Jalpa about this whole low profile this thing. J&K, I've been meaning to talk to him, take it within the next one. Pause parent?
Yes, sir.
हाँ यहाँ मेरे से गर्मियों में खांसी गर्मी हो रही है ना, so no ventilation either. You have something telling them when a recording is going on. You have something indicating. I have a suggestion for you. Get a red bulb, like you have in Operation Theaters. When you start recording, switch it on, and then you can put, like in real studios, that's what they do. Recording.
On the radio station.
Radio station,
You have a light on when it's.
so that people passing
It's
by,
alive.
they know that you're recording, so they don't make any sound out. More questions? That's like 4 pages of questions.
Almost, there are 2 questions left only.
Long only.
2 questions.
You're allowed to indulge you more and more. I know you.
He sent me a whole list. I said, no, please just keep it to 3 or 4 questions. Okay.
So, Mr. Terry, as we are well aware of the fact that emotional well-being is very important for holistic education. So, how is incorporating mental health support for students in challenging environments?
Maybe I should reword it a bit. I think incorporating social emotional learning or mental health and PSSS, I think is important in any environment. I mean, maybe in certain environments more necessary, but I think all children need that type of support and nurturing from ECE. So in the classroom, simply supporting children in terms of working with other students, sharing, positive play, resolving conflicts, and developing that forward, I think is very important. And I think as students get older, they need to have access to services where they can ask questions and feel confident they can ask questions. I think that's very important, that if you feel mentally stressed or not inside, you have the feeling that anxiety, that it's okay. It's natural. It's normal to have that. I get that sometimes. Before I came in here, anxiety, stress. But I think it's normal, and I think if people treat it as something not normal or important, I think it degrades in terms of human experience. I think that's part of it. I think it's what you do with that. It's recognizing and, talk to someone, a friend, a parent, a teacher. Seek out how to contact, for example, services need enhanced here in J&K. Be proactive and not think, it makes me weaker or feel I'm too shy to speak about it. But I think it's important to speak about, because I think here, you're fortunate, there's a lot of avenues to seek out support. I think it's very important, because if not, I think those type of things have potential to grow. So address them from the beginning. I think it's very important.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Terry, lastly, could you share any personal experience or anecdote that reaffirmed your commitment towards the field of education?
I think many small I think when these small moments, I was recently in Assam, and I sat down on a chair with a group of, I think it's early childhood students, and they're showing pictures. I mean, it wasn't Assamese, I think they were Bolo, they spoke. And just asking questions about their pictures. And then, not that I understood, but they're engaged. You see their faces light up. They're happy to talk about what they're doing, the pictures. And I think those types of things, or we went to the school where here in JNK, when I visited the coding, watching girls much like yourselves put together these puzzles and create this animation. And when I see the excitement and joy on students' faces, and also teachers, that reaffirms why I'm involved in education.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Mr. Danish, I'd like to ask you the same question. Could you share any personal moment that reaffirmed your commitment towards the field of education?
Well, I would say like Terry, I mean, there are reaffirming moments also because, I mean, he's heading the entire, UNICEF education department at the India level, but we are here out there in the field. So we get to go visit the field more often. So we see it more often, and I get that reaffirmation. I think I would say, if I speak honestly, I get that reaffirmation every time I go to a school, which is pretty often. But I think if I talk about my first, my first orientation, my first reaffirmation that I am in the right place, it was my first year of Masters in Social Work, and we're supposed to do this field work. I was asked to go to a slum in New Delhi. Although it's very close to a very developed area. It's called the Golconda Basti. In Golconda Basti, I was attached to this organization called Dipale. In Dipale, the first assignment they asked me to do was to do casework with these children of slums. And these were children of maids and rickshaw pullers. And we were running this Balwadi center, which is essentially a bridge education center. And my supervisor, asked me, and I came to him with a challenge, and he's the senior professor, and I asked him, what am I supposed to do? He said that, we want to start the center, we want to educate these children. He told me, the first question that you need to ask yourself is, why are these children, why are these people to eventually become a rickshaw puller? Because it's the lack of education. So that question, when he asked me and I went back, that was my first reaffirmation. Then we started this Balwadi Center. Although honestly, it was a demo project. It was just part of my coursework. I could have just written my project report and moved on. I continued to work on that project with Dipale, and eventually we went and I created a project report, which is supposedly an exercise, but we submitted that report to HCL Foundation that year. We secured 3 lakh rupees for that project, and we got that whole program funded, which no other student had done. So that gave me that excitement. That was my first experience and gave me such a lot of joy. And it's like, this is what I want to do in life.
Thank you, sir.
And that brings us to an end of this remarkable interview with our honorable guests, Mr. Terry Durrnian and Mr. Danish Aziz. It was such an immense pleasure to have you both here, and thank you so much.
Likewise.
Your dedication towards the field of education is truly commendable, and your impact on the lives of countless students is truly commendable. We are really inspired by your visions for the future of Kashmir's and India's educational landscape.
Thank you so much for your time and for shedding light on the transformative work being done in the education sector. We wish you continued success in all your future endeavors.
With this, we have come to an end. It's the time for us to wrap up our show. This is RJ Minsha
and RJ Bazila signing off. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you in the next one.
And until we meet again, remember to keep spreading love, kindness and good vibes wherever you go. Till then, stay tuned, stay inspired. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you so much for having us.